Our story begins 2,025,000 years ago in a small town called Nazareth. A woman named Mary engaged a man named Joseph. Before Mary consummated her marriage to Joseph, she was visited by a powerful being called the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit told both Mary and Joseph that Mary is pregnant even though she is still a virgin. The child that she bears will be called Jesus Christ. 9 months had passed and Mary had her baby in Bethlehem, in a stable full of animals under a bright star. It was because of this star that 3 kings traveled thousands of miles to worship this child, because they believed that Jesus will lead the people of Israel to glory. Not every king wanted to worship Jesus. A king named Herod wanted to kill Jesus, so Mary and Joseph fled to Egypt with the guidance of an angel and waited until Herod died. Time had passed, and Herod finally passed away, so Mary and Joseph went back to Nazareth. When Jesus was around 12 years old, he was in Jerusalem with his family for a Jewish holiday. Jesus ran off by himself and spent 3 days at a Jewish temple, teaching the religious leaders there. When Mary found him, she was worried sick, and Jesus said, "Why were you searching for me?" he said. "Didn't you know that I would be in my Father's house?" 18 years after Jesus went to the temple, he met a person named John. John was preaching to people to seek forgiveness for the evil that they committed. John ended up baptizing Jesus in the River Jordan, and the Holy Spirit came down from heaven like a dove. After this, Jesus walked in the desert for 40 days and didn't eat. During this time, an evil being full of hate and pride named Satan approached Jesus, trying to make Jesus commit sin against God. Satan spoke, "If ye are the Son of God, command that these stones become bread." Jesus responded with, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." Satan then took Jesus to a high place in Jerusalem and said, "If ye are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he shall give his angels charge over you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone." Jesus responds with, "It is written, you shall not test the Lord your God." Satan took Jesus to a high mountain and showed him the kingdoms of the world and said to him, "I will give you the glory of these kingdoms and authority over them, because they are mine to give to anyone I please. I will give them all to you if you will worship me." Jesus responds with, "Get behind me, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the God and serve only him." Satan left him, and angels came down to heal Jesus. After his journey in the desert, Jesus recruited 12 followers to accompany him on his journey. The names are Simon Peter, Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew, James, Timotheus, Simon, and Judas. For the next 3 years, Jesus performed many miracles, turning water into wine, healing the sick, catching so many fish that the net nearly broke, casting out evil spirits out of people, raising people from the dead. He commanded a storm to stop, walked on the water, made a man cripple. He made a crippled man walked. He cured a mute person. Jesus fed more than 5,000 people with 5 pieces of bread and 2 fish. He cured a blind man, and Jesus rose from the dead. Jesus went on top of a mountain and taught. He said not to worry, because God would take care of them. To love your enemies. Do to others that you would do to them. Love God with your entire being. Love your neighbor. Forgive people so God may forgive you. It is hard for you to go to heaven when you're rich. Be humble and serve others before yourself. Be peacemakers, and let your light shine so everyone can see. At the end of the 3 years, Jesus and his followers went to Jerusalem for Passover. Crowds were welcoming Jesus, and he was riding on a donkey back. Jesus went to a temple and started flipping tables, because those tables were there to sell goods, not to worship God. The temple leaders wanted to kill Jesus and convince Judas to betray Jesus. Jesus had a Last Supper before the Roman soldiers came to him and captured him and put him on trial. The Roman soldiers took him to the Roman governor named Pontius Pilate. Jesus was sentenced to death by crucifixion and was whipped and carried a heavy cross to a mountain, where he had his hands and feet nailed to the cross, and a crown of thorns was given to him. When Jesus died, the world turned dark, and an earthquake happened, which tore the temple into two. Jesus was buried in a tomb for 3 days. Some of his followers tried to retrieve his body on Easter, but the body was gone. Jesus came back to more than 500 disciples and stayed on earth for 6 weeks. Then Jesus went to the Mount of Olives and rises to heaven in front of his disciples and disappeared.